Okay, I'm going to do an unboxing of the MacBook Pro 13-inch with the new M1 chip. I had the MacBook Air. Let's take it out of the bag. Ooh. I had the MacBook Air, but there were a couple of limitations that I had started hearing about on the web that I didn't want to deal with. First of all, the screen brightness is 25% brighter on this one. The computer has a fan in it so it can run harder and longer. So I don't have to worry about if I ever do need to demand higher computing capacity from it that it'll throttle on me. Because from what I've seen, this thing does not throttle, full stop. Also, I might be one of the 2 or 3 people that actually care a little bit about the touch bar. And the speakers are better, and from the demonstrations that I've seen online, the mics are better. So the so-called studio mics actually do sound better. So let's first take a look at the box. This is the 13-inch with 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. I didn't need the 16 gigabyte based on everything I've seen. So I didn't spring for that. Didn't want to spend that much more money. The only time I've seen online that you needed more gigabytes of RAM is when you were doing some heavy duty video editing, and I'm not going to be doing heavy duty video editing. As a matter of fact, I'm shooting this in 1080p 60 frames a second. All right, now let's get to the fun part. It's Christmas in November. Get a nice little tab here that we can use to unwrap. Giggity. Okay. Done this a few times. That's a nice sturdy box, and it ought to last for a long time, so that when it comes time for me to resell this, if I don't take it back, I'll have something to package it up with. All right, so we've got the nice pull tab here. Feels very small, very portable. The one thing I like better about the MacBook Air than the Pro is the tapered front. Made it feel more portable. But what I'm getting in exchange is 2 hours extra battery life. So significantly more battery life. I'm willing to trade off the tapered edge. All right. We have what I think is a 61 watt charger. This is bigger than the MacBook Air charger, although I'll never need to use it because I'm using my 16-inch MacBook Pro charger for this. And we have the USB-C to C cable. It looks like it's 2 meters or 6 feet. Don't need to unpack that. That'll be for the next owner of this MacBook to use several years from now. Or, well, honestly, a year or 2 from now. As I try not to keep technology that long, unless it's truly, truly expensive. Usually what happens with Apple's products, their computers, they're ready to go as soon as you open the lid. Yep. Has a nice rice paper over the screen to protect it from the keyboard. Very polished experience. Okay, let's walk through the setup. My language is American. My region is the United States. Don't need any accessibility stuff right now. Need to set my Wi-Fi. And I'll type in the password, and if you all can crack my Wi-Fi like that, well, I got bigger problems because you're that close to me. I'm gonna cut that out anyway. I don't like anybody knowing any of my passwords. Gotta let it cook and connect. And you notice that this is a new computer because the battery is almost full and I'm pulling it out of the box. So this is probably straight from China into my hot little hands. For some reason, it always takes a little while for it. It took a while for it to connect to the Wi-Fi before. Data and privacy. Yes, keep my data private. Migration assistant. Nope, don't need it. All right. Gonna sign into my iCloud account. Hiding the keyboard so that I don't have to do any editing. The great thing is Apple's two-factor authentication. First, it gives you a location so that you know whether or not somebody's trying to hack your PC. Then it gives you the actual one-time password. I need to read and agree to iCloud. Apple is the provider of this service. Okay, I read it. Some of it. Here, it always puts in my whole name as a user account name, and all I need is John, because that's going to be name of my home directory. And let's hide my keyboard again. Okay. I would like to change that bowling ball icon. Something a little more zen. Okay. Creating my computer account, probably going through and setting up home directories and permissions and stuff. Okay, now it's cooking and signing me into iCloud, which is a good thing, because I have all my photos up there on iCloud, so I'm glad to have that set up. Really like the lightness, the portability of this MacBook Pro. When you compare it to the 16-inch, which it doesn't seem like a big difference between 13.3 and 16, but makes a huge difference on the size of the computer. I mean, for one thing, the 16-inch, I think it's 5 or 5.5 pounds, and this is 3 pounds. This is something I can throw into a reasonably sized laptop bag and go. And I'll be nice and share my crash and usage statistics with app developers. Screen time. Don't really care about it, but hey. Alright, let's enable Ask Siri and see how many things I can activate by saying, "Hey Siri." Hey Siri. Hey Siri, open the Documents folder. Hey Siri, show my downloads. Hey Siri, what's the weather? Hey Siri, what does the rest of my day look like? Okay. Do I want to share audio recordings? Sure, I'll be a good citizen. Alright, now here's the fun part where I get to set up Touch ID. Okay, Touch ID is ready. Apple Pay. I think I'll only set up my Apple Card on Apple Pay, even though I have 3 cards associated with it. Wonder why it takes so long for it to do its thing here. So now it's cooking and setting up the Apple Card, which, gotta tell you, I really like the Apple Card because it immediately, you get notifications every time there's a purchase, and refunds go through right away. So if you buy something for $500, you bring it back, that $500 is going to be, it won't post to your account, but you'll have $500 available. Looks like I was just sitting here doing nothing while I thought I was waiting for the card to get set up. I'll have to edit this out. Just going through the process, talking to Apple, setting up my Apple card on this computer for purchases. Although I have yet to use Apple Pay via a website. One time I tried to do it with Best Buy. It told me that I couldn't use it because I had a birthday gift certificate from them. It was like 10% off, and it couldn't be combined. The gift certificate couldn't be used with Apple Pay. Don't know why. So choose your look. I actually prefer light. I used to think I was going to be a dark mode person, but no, I like light. Setting up my Mac. I wonder what it's doing in the background when it's doing that. Okay, so now we have this set up. Now the first thing I'll do is download Chrome. I'll use Safari as my Chrome download program. Because Chrome has been optimized for Mac OS Big Sur running on the M1 chip, and it runs crazy fast. So I'm going to go ahead and download it, and you see here it's asking me to select the version of the Chrome that's right for my Mac. It's giving me the option to use the Mac with the Intel chip, the most common, or the Mac with the Apple chip. So we're going to use Mac with Apple chip because I have an Apple chip. Okay, so we're getting a download. I love how simple installations are on the Mac. Just drag and drop. You can hear already that the Mac sounds different. And the speakers do sound better. Let's see. Let's go ahead and crack open Chrome. It's very responsive. You can tell that right off the bat. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and set up the computer and go through my usual rituals of cleaning up. Okay, now that I've installed Chrome, let's go ahead and run a couple of benchmarks. While in the background an update to Big Sur is downloading. Before we run any benchmarks, let's do my favorite thing and automatically hide and show the dock. That way when I'm using two monitors, I can have the dock wherever I need it to be. And it also doesn't take up that much space, or any space. Okay, so first, let's run a web benchmark that I like. It's called Octane. Gives a good feeling about how good the JavaScript execution engine is. Now, just for context, on my MacBook Pro 16-inch, the Intel with 8 cores, I get about 45,000, give or take. Maybe 49 some days. I have to rerun it, but let's just say about 40,000, about 45,000, and I'm getting 63,000 on this benchmark, which is pretty insane. Let's run it again, and this is in Chrome, the Apple Silicon optimized version. This benchmark is testing the speed of the JavaScript engine, which is critical to the modern web. So it's going to give you a really good indication of how zippy web pages are going to be, especially really complicated single page applications. 62,653. Now let's see how well Safari performs. Let's close that out. Let's completely close out of Chrome. All right. And the Chrome web browser scored about 63,000. Let's just say 63,000. Let's see if the Safari web browser does any better. If I remember correctly, it does run better, or faster, I should say, on this test than Chrome. No. Huh. That's interesting. 61,622. Yesterday when I tested this, there was like a 5,000 to 10,000 point delta between Safari performance and Chrome performance under this Octane JavaScript test. Now today, there's no difference, and I'm wondering if it's because Google has, in the last day, updated. Okay, that's more like what I expected. I wonder if Google has updated their browser within the last day, because before they put up their Apple Silicon optimized version, their ARM version, then they had to take it down because it was crashing. Then they put it back up. But Chrome and Safari are in the same ballpark. Let me run this one more time, just to get a good feeling for where it really is. But I have the feeling that Safari and Chrome are going to be performing about equally, which is pretty good because I am a Chrome person. Safari is a good browser. As a matter of fact, it's a great browser, but it's not platform independent, and I can log on to Chrome and have all my bookmarks and everything all synced up. Okay, so looks like Safari and Chrome are neck and neck with Octane, so that's a good measure of their JavaScript performance. Now let's test out the web speedometer, which basically simulates a web application. Now, when I tested Safari the first day, I had a MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Air, scored like 220. And again, for context, my 16-inch MacBook Pro with 8 cores, that cost me almost $3,000, gets 130 on this benchmark. At this point, the only reason that I'm not selling my Intel Mac is for two things. First of all, it boots into boot camp. Second, it runs Docker and it runs under boot camp. I can run AAA games. And I have a video on that. If you look right here, you can see it. Okay, so 215. Let's test that again. 215 is still a phenomenal score, but I think it can do better. So for doing things on the web, as far as web performance, you pretty much can't beat the M1 chip right now. 222, and I think it's going to score in the 220s if I run it again. I wonder if it just had to warm up and kind of do some kind of just-in-time compile with the JavaScript code. Either way you cut it, it's super fast. Macs would make the M1 chip would make a great Chromebook. 221. Okay. Now let's close out of Safari. Crack open the Chrome browser and see how it does on speedometer. Browserbench.org. I have the feeling they're going to be about the same, so that's definitely a plus, because there's no reason now from a performance perspective for me to go over to Safari. The only thing else I can think of is if Chrome is still somehow a battery hog, even though it's optimized for M1, but I don't think it'll be. I think it'll run well under M1 and be a good energy citizen. $214. Let's test that again, and I'm wondering if it'll be faster the second time around. These M1 chips are pretty amazing. And I think I'm not going to regret taking back the MacBook Air and getting the Pro just for the fan, because I don't hear the fan. It's completely silent. 216. Some Geekbench benchmarks. First for the CPU. I'm going to run this with the CPU architecture Apple Silicon, just so we can see how fast the processor is. At full speed. I'm then going to run the benchmark using the Intel architecture, so that we can see how much of a performance hit Rosetta is on the MacBook Pro. I'm guessing it's going to be like a 40% performance hit. I don't know that for a fact, I'm just guessing. But I'm running Geekbench 5, which is a pretty standard, quick and dirty way to know how powerful your computer is. It's cross-platform. It runs on everything from Android to Windows machines. I wonder if I could actually download the iOS version of Geekbench and run it on this machine. That would be interesting. Okay, so we're almost done, and the benchmarks that I've been seeing should put the single core at around 1700 and the multi-core at around 7700. Okay, so here's the final result: 1720 and 7327. Let's upload this. And let's compare it to some other devices. I'll make the font a little bigger, because if I'm having a hard time seeing it, I imagine you are too. Okay, so I scored 1720, which should put me on the top of this stack. I'm only looking at Mac stuff, but it looks like all the Apple M1s are on the top of the heap for Apple, with scores from 1702 to 1688. And the Intel Mac that is right under this is the iMac with the 10th gen, looks like 8-core processor. But that's a big drop. It goes down to 1249 for the single core Geekbench. So these entry-level MacBooks are beating out desktop processors, because these are low power entry-level MacBooks. They're replacing the Mac Mini, which is an entry-level product. They're replacing the MacBook Air, which is an entry-level product, and they're replacing the MacBook Pro 13-inch, which is an entry-level product. So that's pretty impressive. Let's take a look at multi-core scores. Now multi-core, you have all these multi-$1,000, these $5, $10, $15,000 machines that are beating it out. But when you get down here to a iMac Pro from 2017, is scoring 7981, which is a fair bit above the Mac Mini. But bear in mind, the Mac Mini is a $700 computer, and this is probably a couple $1,000. So that's pretty impressive. So you have a MacBook Air and MacBook Pros, these entry-level products that are within striking distance, so to speak, of a MacBook Pro. and it looks like they beat out all the other Intel laptops. So this is the fastest Intel laptop that we have. Like, so I believe my MacBook Pro is a late 2019 with 8 cores. It's a 16-inch. So these entry-level M1 products are beating out the MacBook Pro in multi-core performance. That's pretty incredible. So for $1,300, I can get faster multi-core processing than a $2,700 laptop. Okay. That is most impressive. Now let's run it under Intel and see what impact that has on the Geekbench result. Like I said, I think that the Intel, the Rosetta translation is probably the Intel translation is probably going to give us a 40% hit on performance. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just sort of guessing based on the emulation that I've seen on the Windows on ARM machines. It just looks like emulation. That's the tax. That's the price that you pay. But because these machines are so much faster with their single core, even emulated, the programs may run faster emulated just because this processor is so much faster than the other Intel processors. So Apple's claim that some programs might run better under emulation than they do on the real Intel Silicon could be true. Just based on what I've seen running Visual Studio Code in emulation, I can tell it's a little sluggish in some places, but for the most part, it runs fine. I ran Office in emulation, and it too seems pretty fair. No real problems there. So I think for the typical person, as long as you're not buying a Mac to run Windows through boot camp, as long as that's not a part of your workflow, you should be good to go. Okay. So we can see that Rosetta, we can see the impact of running under Rosetta. So I said that it would be a 40% hit, and it looks like I was wrong. So 1240 divided by 1720 is 72. So there's a 28% hit on the single core, and 5, 4, 16 divided by 7327. And there's a 26% hit on multi-core. So let's just average it out and call it 27%. So that's not bad at all, because even though there's a 27% decrease in performance overall for running under Rosetta, because this processor is so much faster, this 1240 score on Geekbench Did I close it? Yes, I think I did. But my point is that this 1240 score is higher than many, or in the same ballpark as many of the Intel Macs. So I really don't think that most people see a difference, other than initially when you start up the program, it's doing some magic in the background. I think it's actually translating the code and recompiling it for ARM in the background. So that's pretty impressive. So I have BioShock 2 fired up in the background. This is just so we can get an idea of how smoothly or not smoothly the game runs under Rosetta. Looks pretty good so far. Looks like it's running at least 30 frames a second. Textures look real good. Water effects are really nice. It's running really smoothly. So I wonder what the quality levels are. Like I said, it seems to be running really smoothly. I haven't run into any action yet to really get an idea what's happening. Looks like it automatically brought the resolution down to 840 by 525. That's pretty low, but it looks fine. Just for fun, let's try to push up the graphics. Let's push it up to 720. Still looks smooth. Special effects look nice. I've never played this game before, so forgive me, I'm just exploring. Twisting around looks pretty straightforward, and the frame rate seems to hang on, to hold up. Okay, let's try pushing the graphics up some more. Push it up to 1920 by 1080, but since it's widescreen, I guess it's 1920 by 1200. I guess the game is trying to, it defaulted to this really low resolution, but I assume that it did that because it's running an emulation, and it looked around and basically said, oh, I'm running in this weird environment. I have no idea how fast I can go. So I'm gonna set the game to this super low resolution, but I'm at 1080p right now, or 1920 by 1200 actually, because this is 16 by 10 aspect ratio. Seems to be running pretty smoothly.
Daddy was sleeping for such a long time, and Eleanor has missed you. Find her and you'll be
Okay. Let's push the graphics up. Let's push it up to native resolution and see what happens. Still running smooth. I do realize this is an old game, but it's been remastered, so the textures should be pretty demanding. Looks like it's running at least 30 frames a second. Okay, that's enough wandering around Rapture.